Γεια σας και καλώς ήλθατε στο euronews. Ο πόλεμος στην Ουκρανία ανάγκασε τη Σουηδία και τη Φινλανδία να αφήσουν πίσω τους την ουδετερότητα και να αιτηθούν την ένταξή τους στο ΝΑΤΟ, προκειμένου να διασφαλίσουν την στρατιωτική συνδρομή σε περίπτωση που το χρειαστούν. Στο νέο μονοπάτι που επέλεξαν οι χώρες αυτές βρήκαν ωστόσο ένα μεγάλο εμπόδιο. Την Τουρκία, που από την πρώτη στιγμή στάθηκε απέναντι σε όλες σχεδόν τις υπόλοιπες χώρες της συμμαχίας και αρνήθηκε να υπογράψει. Τον περασμένο Ιούνιο, Σουηδία και Φινλανδία, παρά τις αρχικές αντιρρήσεις, αποδέχτηκαν τις απαιτήσεις της Τουρκίας και κατά την πρώτη μέρα της Συνόδου Κορυφής του ΝΑΤΟ επετεύχθη υπογραφή μνημονίου από τις τρεις χώρες, κάτι που θεωρήθηκε ως άρση του τουρκικού βέτο στην ένταξη των δύο βόρειο-ευρωπαϊκών χωρών στο ΝΑΤΟ. Αυτό όμως δεν συνέβη και η Άγκυρα γύρει νέες αξιώσεις που έχουν να κάνουν με την έκδοση πάνω από 100 ατόμων στην Τουρκία. Όπως λέει στη συνέντευξή του στο euronews, ο Υπουργός Εξωτερικών της Σουηδίας, η Στοκχόλμη δεν εξετάζει καν τέτοιο σενάριο. Your country recently took over the lead of the European Union in these challenging times. Which are the key priorities of the Swedish presidency?
Well, the first and foremost priority in the field of foreign and security affairs is, of course, the support to Ukraine so that it can win a victory in the field against the Russian aggression. And we believe that much has been done, but more needs to be done in order for Ukraine to be sustained politically, economically, and humanitarian, and also militarily, of course.
You recently said that the European Union is prepared for a long war in Ukraine and that it's going to do whatever it takes to help Ukraine. How do you see this war ending?
Well, right now, the most important thing is to realize that this war only has one outcome, and that is the re-establishment of the territorial integrity of Ukraine. It is only Ukraine, which was the victim of the Russian aggression, that can decide when and where it is time to sit down at the negotiating table. No other country can make that decision above the head of the Ukrainian people, who after all have sacrificed a lot in this war and who needs our common, and our joint support within the European Union. And this is the aim of the Swedish presidency, to see to it that Ukraine can win victories in the battlefield, which they are already doing, that can enable them to regain their territory. After all, they're also fighting for all of us, because at the bottom of this conflict is the question of sovereignty of smaller states and the right to make decisions about security arrangements, which is the reason why this war started in the first place.
So you said that the European Union has already done enough but needs to do a lot more. Like what?
Well, first of all, we have to maintain what we have already done, namely to keep up the financial support, the macro-financial support, so that Ukraine can be sustained and survived as a nation. That means being able to pay out pensions, being able to have a state that functions. Secondly, we have to have an eye on, of course, the humanitarian side, with so many Ukrainians, being left and bereaved of many things through this terrible winter. That's cause also for financial efforts. The political effort is an obvious one. We need to stand by Ukraine in their fight and show the rest of the world that Ukraine is also fighting for us, for all of us, for the right to make our own decisions about security arrangements and with whom we want to cooperate with. And finally, there is a military component that we need to be able to procure and give more military aid. And the last messages coming out of capitals like Berlin, like Paris, like London, about renewed efforts and more military material are heartening, but more needs to be done, and we need to understand that this will be a long war, and we need to be there constantly at the side of Ukraine.
In this war, it's very important to have to sustain and maybe enhance the transatlantic alliance. But how do you think the trade tensions between the U.S. and Brussels over the IRA pact can influence this alliance?
Well, first of all, I think we have to make a division. The ERA is one thing. We have to talk about that, and there are certainly good negotiations and discussions underway. The decision just before Christmas from the Biden administration that car manufacturers in Europe were to be, there was an exemption to be made for them in relation to this Inflation Reduction Act is a good sign. But I don't don't necessarily see the connection, because I think that first and foremost Europe has to increase the amount of money and the support that we are giving to Ukraine in order to get in balance with the United States. The American people, after all, have provided much more military material and equipment and money to Ukraine, and this is something which we have to take into account. I'm not saying that we should do less or that the Americans should do less. We should do more, both of us.
In these challenging times, Sweden decided to enter NATO.
Yes.
It was a very important decision. Sweden was very warmly welcomed by the members of the alliance, but you found an obstacle, which is Turkey. How are the negotiations with Ankara going?
And first of all, the decision by Sweden and Finland to join NATO is, of course, a crucial one for our safety and security, and it is very heartening to see the warm welcome by the entire NATO family towards our application, which has been ratified by the various parliaments and the American Congress at a record speed. It has never been seen anything like it. It is quite true that Turkey remains as one of the parliaments. The other is Hungary, that needs to ratify. We are waiting that Hungary should start in February. That leaves us with Turkey's parliament. The presumption of the ratification by the Turkish parliament rests on the trilateral memorandum which was signed at the summit in Madrid last year between Sweden, Finland and Turkey. And we believe that we have fulfilled most of the items on the list, and the time is very close now when the Turkish parliament should begin the ratification of Sweden and Finland's application to join NATO.
But Ankara says that their requirements still need to be fulfilled by Sweden in order for Turkey to sign. What can happen about that?
Well, in the memorandum there are some clauses which are connected to legislative changes in Sweden. They are underway and will come true this spring and enter into effect. There have also been some items in relation to the export of defense material which are also being handled. Then there has been some demands which we will not be able to fulfill, and they are connected, of course, with the extradition of persons, because in Sweden we have independent judiciaries, and the Swedish government cannot say to a judge what to do. And this means that if a judge, which has happened now during some occasions, presents a verdict which means that you will not be able to extradite that person, that verdict stands, and we won't be able to change it. This has also been communicated very clearly to the Turkish government, and we are in a dialogue about the fulfillment of a memorandum on these points.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you.